This is Tribalism and Resisting the System, Episode 2. For those of you just coming on to this, if you haven't seen Episode 1, I'd suggest you go back and watch it to kind of have tonight in context. For those that don't know, first 3 episodes are kind of an extended introduction where I read a mission statement called Tribalism and Resisting the System, a Universal Perspective. So, as you know, you'll assume as I'm explaining it, there's 3 parts to the mission statement. First 3 episodes, I did part 1 already, so we're starting with part 2. For those who are ready to continue on, I guess I'll start by just skimming through part 2 to refresh our memory. We all have the natural right to live how we want and with whom we want, as long as we do not harm others doing the same or encroach on their liberty to do the same. Independent community spirit being the whole point. Organizing into small, self-sustaining groups that live a simple way and tread lightly upon the earth and each other while shedding our dependency on the system and its institutions is how we win. Fighting each other and getting caught up in political distraction is how we lose. In the system, we are insignificant grains of sand on a vast beach. In a small, autonomous tribal community, each member is as important as the next and is like family. Would you rather be an easily replaceable gear in a giant machine that chews up people and the environment, or an irreplaceable member of your own tribe, which is your people? Alright, so, the first part, we all have the natural right to live how we want, with whom we want. That's fairly self-explanatory, so I'm not gonna cover a lot of time on that. You can figure that out. The next part starts off organizing into small self-sustaining groups, which we talked about in episode 1, obviously, and I've talked about in my other videos, and people that have followed my work other places, we know all that. Okay, treading lightly upon the earth and each other while shedding dependency on the system and its institutions is how we win. Fighting each other and getting caught up in political distraction is how we lose. Now, there's what I'd like to discuss. Politics. People, I think, have a really limited idea when it comes to modern politics. And I'm not talking about people that are a rah-rah government. I'm talking about people that are basically or seemingly opposed. What I constantly hear is it's a giant division. We're more divided than we've ever been, and things like that. And that's definitely true on one level. But I'm going to tell you a whole different way of looking at this. I've mentioned before that I think a lot of what's wrong with things is people practice totally backwards thinking. Okay, politics is dividing the country. It's a huge rift and all this. We hear it all the time. With each election, you hear it more and more. And the first thing about that is, personally, other than on social media and in the media, and those two are intertwined a lot more than you think, it exists and it's put in your face. In real life, I go out there, sometimes politics brought up, things might get a little heated, but for the most part, I'm not seeing this huge divided, more than we've ever been thing really going on in reality, at least in my area. And I've talked to people around the country, and a lot of them are saying the same thing. So some of this is just media generated, but let's even, for the sake of argument, consider that it's completely legit, it's real. There's this great division. It's politics. What politics really does is it unifies, and even as it divides, it's unifying because it's getting everyone, no matter what side they're on, left, right, in the middle, on the fringe, whatever. If you're following politics, you're focused on politics. The focus of all these groups is on the same thing and in the same direction. Okay, like I mentioned on the thing, distraction. That's a big distraction. Okay, and it's really become, and the news in general has become just, another arm of the entertainment business anyways. But as an analogy, let's take a professional sports team or teams, and you've got the red team and then you've got the blue team. They're playing football, and bitter enemies. But when they play a game, they're both in the same stadium. People who follow politics, they're all in the stands. Some of them like the red team, some of them like blue team. Some of them, they could get to brawls in the parking lot and torching cars after the game. They're so, bitter enemies. But there's a guy at the door of the place, this big stadium where this game's going on between these bitter enemies. He's collecting money for tickets from everybody that walks through the door. And you know what? He's collecting money and he's demanding a ticket before entry to everyone that goes in, regardless of what team they root for. As long as those stands are packed, he doesn't care. And the system, and the aspect of the system known as politics, that's what it does. And the people in the stands are so focused on that field and those players, and then there's the commentators up in the box there, and they're giving a blow-by-blow and giving their expert opinions on everything. What does this sound like? Does this sound familiar? And as long as those stands are packed, the guy at the booth at the door, he doesn't care who wins. And it's the same, and what I'll say is, people are going to be, of course it depends on who wins. The left wants this, and the right doesn't want that, and the right wants this, and the left doesn't want it. So there's this, but things aren't as spontaneous, as it's put forth to you. The whole thing of the news and politics and everything is all, tune in tomorrow to see what happens next. This suspense and titillation. People got to be more sophisticated and really see through this. Because, they're keeping you looking where they want you to look. Divided left and right. The whole idea being is that what's really playing out behind the scenes is a long-term business plan. In that long-term business plan, as ideologies gain and lose momentum, all they really have to do is alter the propaganda associated with it. A good example of this locally is the wind farms on the ridge lines. When the idea first came around a few years ago, maybe 7, 8, 9 years ago, 6, 7 years ago, the left of the area, which is just an outreach of the bigger left, so I'm sure it was going on everywhere. They were against it for environmental reasons. And then on the right, they were all for it because of business reasons, okay? And now all of a sudden, the left is all for wind farms and the right is all against it, and everybody's laughing about, windmill cancer or something. Same exact stuff going on. The ideology's flipped on it. If this were something in a larger political scheme of things, in high-level politics, which this particular thing, at least in my area, really wasn't. It's just a local thing. But, it would be just the same. They don't care what the ideology is. All they have to do is alter the propaganda, and everybody, for the most part, just falls in line. The deal is politics is just one of the many facades of the system. It's just a face stuck on it for you to be focused on, for you to look at, and it acts in some ways as a scapegoat, as all the blame gets put onto it, and then you vote, and then it's all clean again. All the crap stuck to it. Well, voted. Oh, the opposite guy won this time. We'll sure show them, and it's all clean again. But actually, nothing at all has changed, except for it's like having the same old shabby house and putting new curtains up. It doesn't matter. It's all cult of personality. You get the idea. But anyways, it's a facade for a system that every facet of it and every progression of it, every progression of it is designed to further and further steal your freedom by making you more and more dependent on it. Being independent of the system and its institutions. That's the opposite. Not the left, not the right, not the libertarians, or anybody in between, or the social democrats, or whatever they call them now. The socialists. It doesn't matter. There's a lot of places you can find information about this sort of thing. I mean, you're drifting into the conspiracy realm, a lot of that. But I think if somebody wanted to read one small, easy-to-read book that is very dated, because it was written in the Nixon era, but really breaks down, the idea of there's a facade, and behind it is a whole other system that's operating in a whole other way, and the other one is just something that bounces around in front of it that we focus on. There's an under call it Conspiracy by Gary Allen. Wrote it in like 1971. I don't know. Like I say, it's very dated, so there's not going to be anything in it that applies to modern current events. But as far as some idea that this facade exists, accompanied by hundreds of quotes from notable people, famous notable people, people that are into the system up to their eyeballs, who at times had been quoted in their deepest, darkest memoirs, of things that kind of told what's going on. He goes into pretty in-depth talking about Carol Quigley, who was an insider, who was kind of a journal keeper for the system, and wrote like a 1,200-page book about it. So he breaks that down, so you don't got to go out and read a 1,200-page book. You read that chapter and under call it Conspiracy, and he pretty much hits everything you need to know. I mean, if you want to go through 1,200 pages, see if it's all there, go ahead. But I'm pretty sure it's been researched. But that's a simple book, a little paperback book, half-inch thick. You can read it in an afternoon. That goes through the basics, and the real basics. Anybody who's like delved into any conspiracy stuff knows that the first thing is pretty much the entry-level conspiracy is the banking conspiracy. that's covered in the book. That's kind of what it all revolves around. So it's really, I'd read that book, and as far as conspiracies go, I mean, if it's something you enjoy as a hobby, go ahead, but I myself, you read something like an undercover conspiracy, maybe a couple other similar things that are a little more up to date, so you can apply, more modern things than something, almost 50 years ago. Maybe you want to do, but beyond that, I mean, it's not something you want to get caught up in. It's just another one of those things that ends up grabbing your attention, away from the real goal. But as far as politics, the government, all that, these facades of the system, what we really need to do is make them irrelevant to our lives, independent of the system and its institutions. Again, that's the key. That's why I put those together like that, because one is the solution for the other. So that's where you want to be focused, not on the presidential antics of the week. Not on CNN, not on Fox News, not on any of that. Doesn't matter. I mean, keep it in the periphery. I mean, that's what I do. I kind of keep that kind of stuff way in the periphery, just so I can, get some idea of, what cliff the lemmings are going to try to run off next, so I can stay out of their way, basically. Beyond that, you don't need it. And that takes us out to the end of part 2. The idea of your insignificance in the system. In the system, if you're doing something and something gets screwed up and you got to call someplace, you learn real quick that you're nothing but a number in their database. If you've got any real problem, and that's not a way to live at all. You'll learn real quick if you don't have any insurance and you walk into a medical facility. And yeah, they'll go through the motions of checking you out and charge you $100, but in the end, they say don't let the door hit you. Trust me on that. But the smaller the group, the more significant each individual member is. And that's something we kind of went over in part 1, so I don't want to rehash all that, but that's the main thing. Huge, large group, even if the system, wasn't as blatant as it is. You're an insignificant, and that's, back years ago, I listened to my grandmother talk, and they had, telephones. My mother, they did. My grandmother, she was, alive when they first came in. But my mother grew up with a telephone. Maybe not at her house, but they were always there somewhere in their life. And there was television in my mother's day. She was probably a teenager when TV came out. But things were centered way more towards the immediate community. I mean, the operator you talked to on the phone was somebody in an office in your middle of your town. Now it's somebody in India or someplace. The larger the group, the more insignificant each member is. And the smaller the group, the more significant. So, and the idea of tribalism as a way of resisting the system, how that all ties in, is you're in a small group where you've got significance, and you're breaking your dependence on the system and its institutions. It really doesn't break down any simpler than that. And I know, mentioning some of these things, raining on people's political parade, not a way to gather a lot of followers, that's for sure. And I don't blame people if they follow that sort of thing and they're true believers and they don't want to hear otherwise. I don't blame them if they don't want to hear it. Do your thing. But for those of you who either already are somewhat aware of that, or very aware of that, or I've piqued your curiosity and you're thinking, wow, maybe it's true, maybe politics is just professional wrestling, or glorified sports entertainment. Maybe it is, and if you think that, pursue it a little bit. None dare call it conspiracy. You can get it a free PDF online. You can order a reprint of the book. I've actually got an original of the book, 10 cents at a small town library book sale. Read it in a couple afternoons. Totally changed my life. Totally changed my outlook on things. And it's very good. But like I say, it's dated. They don't talk about things we mainly talk about in it. So it's not going to be like, oh, I'm going to get this book and it's going to be all like what I saw in that video. But what he does do is go over, the facade of politics and some of the mechanizations behind it that make it work, circa 1971 or something. Obviously it's, with the digital format, it's just exploded in the last 10 years. But when you break it down, it's the same thing, just more of it now. Propaganda isn't even a challenge. They don't even have to do it well. And people just gobble it down. But I'm gonna make this a little shorter one. And figure that's probably enough for you guys to chew on for a while. I'll be working up episode 3, the conclusion of the mission statement, as soon as I possibly can. A couple of weeks probably. Maybe in a week would be nice, just to get it concluded and wrapped up. But till then, just think about it.